Dr. Brandy, how important do you think that women of color need to be represented within the STEM community as well as the cannabis research community? Are they being represented enough? I don't think so, but I'd love to hear from you about that.
You've never heard of me, so that answers your question. There's a reason, and it's a lot of white male dominant strong arming. I got my bachelor's degree from CSUN working on actually the endocannabinoid system under Dr. Cohen there. I got my master's degree there, and I went to Johns Hopkins School of Medicine 5 years after, working in pharmaceutical industry here at UCLA. As a black woman, people just still look at me. Actually, I don't even need these to see. I just wear them because you perceive me differently if I wear them. They're ADHD glasses for using the computer so that I can read the computer more easily. But I find that when I wear them, people actually take me seriously as a PhD in biochemistry and don't think I'm an artist or a dancer, which I like to dance, or a singer. There's nothing wrong with these vocations. It's just interesting that I would be going somewhere with my STEM family at Hopkins or even my UCLA STEM fam, and we have our little posters, and they check everyone, and they'd be like, yeah, we're going to this cell biology conference, and they get to me, and they'd be like, oh, is this artwork? And I'd be like, what's different about me? There's 3 people from India, 3 people who are Chinese, a Japanese person, 3 white people, and then you get to me and suddenly I'm an artist, right? So representation matters, but it also matters if you're actually representing where you came from. And this is, I gotta say this to possibly any minority STEM people here. I grew up in a very blue-collar family. I mean, my parents are both ex-convicts. They were both convicted for murder. They were both pardoned. It was in self-defense. This is during the civil rights. My mom is Caucasian, but raised me pro-black, so I grew up to fight for my sisters, learning that all people were my sisters and brothers. So going into STEM was a funny thing because they didn't know what the hell I was doing. It's kind of like being little Sheldon, right? I was just like, oh, this thing, and these rockets, and they were like, okay, whatever. But they offered me unwielded support, and just like any poor people would. I noticed in poor families, they're just like, yay, go little magic, and they don't know what the hell I'm talking about. They're just like, do it, yay! And I went to school with some of the richest kids in the nation. They were white, they were male, they were heterosexual, they were soccer players, and they played rugby or whatever, rich people do. And they were no better scientists than I were. In fact, they were 11th year students, I would say, were mostly white guys that were just hanging out. And I'm like, really, it must be nice for it to be that easy. Because I was crying in my books and always having to prove myself. So if you are in a STEM program and you're a woman, just know you have to be 10 times better. If you're black or indigenous, or if your skin is darker than a paper bag, or even gets that dark, you're going to be 100 times better. And so hold yourself to that standard, and nobody will ever be able to knock you. That's not like a pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Not everybody's able to do that, but if you can't, ask your sisters for help. Turn to people and ask for help. That's something that I had to learn. Find your allies, because there's a whole world out there saying that you can't. And they'll continue to say you can't even when you're canning. I was in grad school canning, winning awards, and people were still trying to dig at me. Other grad students would always be competing with me or whatever. And I ignored it. I held my chin up, and I kept doing 100 times better because that's the only way. And in our industry, there's me and one other PhD in public health that I know of. There's not many women to begin with. Most of the dudes are trying to make money. I saw a very famous lab in the industry posted, oh, cannabis stops the spread of HIV. And I'm like, oh my God, that was a monkey study. It's not even true. Please don't do that. I'm freaking out because I care. And I think that's a difference between women, is we're so passionate. I don't identify just as woman, but as a two-spirit person, I'm so passionate about what I do, and I would never try to harm someone in that way, not even if it made me look smart and good and made me $1 million, which my family could totally use, you know that. I'm more focused on remembering where I came from and helping those students that think, oh, I'm not rich and I don't fit in and I'm weird and I'm queer and I'm this and my family's borrowing money from me, while I'm in college. You can do it. And you're just gonna have to do it better. And you're just gonna have to tie your shoes a little bit tighter. You have to get up a little bit more early, and they'll learn to accept you. They'll learn to like it.
Definitely, yeah. You got supporters. We're all here to support each other at CannaClub. That's what we do. especially at CannaClub, we are very aware of the social equity program. Why is it so important?
So I'm going to try to kind of tie into the narrative since we're talking about our various communities. So I'm Afro-Indigenous, in case you couldn't tell. Usually can't. So that means I'm Black and I'm North American Indian. I'm of Choctaw Nation, although I'm registered as Diné or Navajo. In our communities, we are up against a lot of things because cannabis means jail time. Cannabis means the cops will kill you. Cannabis means a lot more severe penalties, and this goes into Latino communities as well because anyone knows those are indigenous people as well. And it's not Latinos that necessarily pass as white that are being murdered by the police, let's just say. So you're up against a lot of things, even if people believe and grandma keeps a secret plant in the closet that you don't know about, or that bottle of something that she gives you when you're really sick. And the same with Black grandmas too, they do it too. They hide it because all they know is you could go to jail. And even if they believe in the medicinal powers, it's like, well, it might heal you, but you might die. So, you know, it's this life or death gamble, and it has been in our communities for a long time. So as a Black person, I go back to the history of bringing back slavery and bringing seed here. People's teeth were pulled out for saying the word daga, which is in different African dialects means cannabis plant. They actually removed their teeth. So these things fall into this modern history where we have Black, Latino, and indigenous people kind of being held back by the quote-unquote legalization efforts. So the social equity bills are really important. A lot of the licensing, and I've read all the dialogue, and one thing I had a problem with is you have to give up your indigenous federal rights for this license. Why would I give up federal indigenous rights to have a roki-doki license that I'm paying $10,000 and up a year to have when nobody's making that kind of money that cares about their patients? Nobody's making that kind of money who labels correctly. Nobody's making that kind of money without oppressing someone else. So I have a lot of issues with the way Prop 65 was written because, 64. Prop 215 could have been cleaned up a lot better. Patient advocacy groups were really against it, and a lot of community groups were against it because it took away the right for patients to cultivate for themselves. And it took away their groups, their cooperatives, where people like us would get together and say, oh, hey, we have this garage, and we're gonna grow 20 plants, and we're gonna split them between us. And then we're gonna have this medicine for a year. So there's a lot of problematic things. So the social equity programs are the only way to kind of bring back free cannabis giveaway farms, cooperative farms, and low-cost medicine for people who are truly sick, because being sick costs a lot of money. If everyone wants to have capitalism, which I personally don't, but if we're gonna live in capitalism, everything costs money. And so with nowhere to donate to and nowhere to give away cannabis, we're really hurting the patients while we're rewarding recreational users. That's just my opinion. So it's changed a lot. Now I see people getting into this industry like money signs in their eyes, when it used to be people with tears in their eyes saying, this is all that works for me, I will die without this. Like people like me who cried at night with pain without it, people who needed access to this other thing. And I think without stepping up and preserving those boundaries and those limits around at least medical cannabis, we're gonna lose the health benefits forever.